Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for coming to listen to my talk. And I'll be talking about observability in the context of APIs. The title of my presentation is From Flying Blind to Full Visibility Using Real-Time API Observability with AI-Powered Anomaly Detection. And I came up with this title months ago, and as I go through this talk, it's evolved, and I'm no longer focusing so much on the flying blind, but on the real-time observability. So a little bit about myself. My name is Gertrude, and I work as a technical writer, and I'm also an advocate, developer advocate, and community practitioner at Qliks. I have a podcast. It's been on a hiatus for a while, but it's coming back mid-November. I'm originally from Zambia, but currently based in Lund. And of course, I'm an inclusion in tech advocate, and most recently, AI literacy and adoption. I also have a son who's 6 years old. And previously, I have worked in API management and governance. I have written docs, advocated for docs, evangelized about APIs, but at the same time, I was not focused on API observability. And we did have dashboards, and every now and then and every morning, you could look at dashboards and be like, okay, everything is going well. But then I have many friends that work in the observability space, and when I was talking about I want to learn a little bit more about AI and how I can incorporate that in my work. That was the first recommendation. And I was like, okay, I'll deep dive into this. And that's why this talk is quite personal, because it's a journey of how I am incorporating AI into my work, but also how I see an opportunity in anomaly detection for not just the way that it's previously been used. And right now, I feel more confident about my hypothesis, because it was sort of confirmed during the keynote speech and the panel discussions, and I will get into that as we go through it. The plan for the talk is that I will talk about monitoring, like just from monitoring to awareness, and then we'll talk about looking at errors to adoption signals, and then dashboards to AI-powered detection, from theory to practical first step, and it will be blended as I go in. Now, today's ecosystem looks kind of like this. Could be more complex, but I tried to get in as much as I could. Not the best diagram, but you know what I mean. So APIs talk to everything, and everything talks to APIs, and it just feels like a verb that sometimes can be done better and other times not so great. And that's the reason why it's important to know what's happening, at which stage errors can also be talking back to the API. And so I call it the modern API chaos, because for me, it feels like it's a lot, and it's so many people involved in the process, but it's also so many systems that are involved. And that's why being granular about monitoring your APIs becomes very important. Based on that slide, I guess it's a no-brainer that visibility should be very important. And if I could advocate for something, it should be that there's specific people looking into this, but at the same time, that's where the AI bit comes in and makes it a bit more interesting. And originally, I was going to then bring in why flying blind is not that important, but I restricted myself from using that word very loosely, because even though it's metaphorical, I do not want to pretend like I know what it is to be blind, because I did meet someone who's blind and had that experience of their life. So I shunned away from using that. Anyway, why is it important? Availability. Like at the most basic level, you have to see what the resource is calling or not calling. Performance, how quick a response is. And then security, which is one of the big things when it comes to API observability. Because security, as we've heard, it touches on so many things. It touches on the business, it touches on trust, And so we cannot overlook that aspect. And then there's other reasons why you should have visibility into your APIs, like data validation, looking at feature changes, third-party integrations, and partner APIs, as we had seen in the previous slides. And currently, the monitoring space and observability is growing so much, with a prediction of 2033 to be valued at about 8.6 billion. And that means there's a lot of twos out there. And when I started to create this presentation, I was focused on the twos that would enable observability. But as I went on, I found that it was more interesting to focus on the principle behind observability, and that's what I will focus on throughout this talk. And some of the people that are exhibiting today are the vendors that look into this more strictly, but I will not focus on the vendors. I will just focus on the theory. So traditionally, APIs have always been monitored based on availability, performance, and capacity. And when you look at observability itself, it adds another layer, because observability then becomes about the data and questions that you can ask, where monitoring talks about what has happened. And I was like, this is great, and I like it, and I can find things, but where does AI come in? And this is the conversation that I was having with everyone that was telling me to look into observability as a first step in getting into the AI space. But I couldn't find that. I was like, okay, I guess then I just have to slap AI on it, because it feels like everyone just says AI powered and good to go. But no, what is possible, what's interesting, and what adds value? That's what I was trying to, those are the questions that I was asking, and that's what I wanted to look into. And based on that, anomaly detection came in. With that, I was very, very happy, because as I learned about it, I was able to understand that anomalies work faster than humans. And that's what becomes more important, where when you have a dashboard, a human has to physically look at it, look at the spikes. Is it green? Maybe there's some kind of an alerting system where if there's some downtime or an API has a spike, then you get an alert. But anomalies will do it faster. Now, I'm not a monitoring expert, let's say that, but I do love APIs and the opportunity that AI gives into that. So what I found was that, yes, the case for anomaly detection on real-time API observability will work great on noticing errors, latency, and security threats. And these are the most used use cases when it comes to anomaly detection. And you can obviously see it when it comes to security, that sometimes touches on the business. If you have the SLOs and the SLAs, that will touch on the business if you can't fulfill what you have promised. But also in other industries like banking, security threats can be really critical, or health. So that was interesting, and I was like, okay, this is great. But at the same time, I did not find the oomph, the aha, like, I like this. This is what I want to talk about, because at the end of the day, even though I can see this, it's not me that's going to fix this. Where do I have the most influence when it comes to this conversation? And maybe that's where my abstract would have been misleading. I did not change it, because indeed all those things did happen, and I did get to understand how anomaly detection works in those three areas. But I was like, okay, I'm a developer advocate. One thing that I like to look into and not lose sleep over, is to do with awareness, adoption, and getting power users. So what if we use the same principles of anomaly detection into creating awareness, into looking into adoption metrics, and noticing power users. And this is the hypothesis that I came up with. Like, okay, we'll use the same principles, but on a different use case. And so I was like, okay, just visibility might not be enough. So let's get into my thought process on this. Yes, I will stay on this one for a while to sort of let you see what my hypothesis is, but I will also define anomaly detection, because that becomes important considering the context. Traditionally, in API monitoring, it's been defined as the process of identifying unusual patterns, behaviors of deviation in API performance metrics that indicate potential failures, which is what I mentioned. Now, anomalies are often looked as outliers, but at the same time, they are signals. And I will show, let me just see if I do have, okay, yes, this one. I will show this definition because this is the one that I like the most, because it does validate my concept. It's anomaly detection simply means defining normal patterns and metrics based on business functions and goals, and identifying data points that fall outside of an operation's normal behavior. This is a definition that I found by IBM, and I felt like this one actually validates what I'm trying to say. It's just about identifying what's the normal behavior of an API. And in this case, an API can be used to track adoption rates. It can be used to measure awareness levels even before an API becomes a product based on the internal usage, for instance, because I don't know how it works for where you're from, but sometimes most APIs that are public also have a private-facing interface where the users become the internal developers. And with that, you can sort of anticipate how it will land when it goes public. And that's what I was going with. So I felt validated by this definition because the other definitions were more focused on the security issues and the usual use case. Now, the idea is that anomalies are not just inherently bad. It's not when something is completely wrong, but they can also just be used for awareness using the same principle. And so you will still collect metrics, and you will still use those metrics to feed your data. And it could be visualized, it could be alerted, same process, just different use case. And this is when you get into the machine learning side of anomaly detection and some of the methods that I used, where I think the time series could work best when could work best for simple and interpretable types of metrics. And it would work, the challenge is that it would work best when usage is steady enough or spikes might dip as accepted normally. And what I mean by that is that if you don't have enough people that are using it, then it might not really work. But you could anticipate, and you decide what volume you're trying to go with in order for it to be termed normal. And in the same way, you could use the isolation forest. And in that case, it might be challenging if you don't have enough data and dimensions. And then again, it becomes about the data. And we all know that APIs are all about data. So that's my hypothesis, and that's what I'm working with. OK, the lessons that I've learned through this process is that observability is a journey. I don't know, how many people are observability experts in here? OK. How many are curious? Oh, great. Because that's where I am as well. And honestly, it's a journey. You decide what is most important for you in trying to get to understand observability. But what I did learn are three things: technical, data is messy, it's noisy, it's it's a lot on the technical side. There's a lot of manipulation that has to be done, and it's either you can dig deeper into that if that's what you want, and you will get to know more about observability on that front. But then there's also the processes. From the initial slide, the many things that are going on, you could dig deeper into the processes and streamline that. Yesterday, someone talked about microservices and how that could help. That could be your take on observability and be focused on that. But then there's also the humans, and that's where the communication comes in, because with visibility, you build trust. If you do not have visibility, you don't know what's going on, and so you cannot build that trust and confidence within your end user, whoever that might be, but within yourself as well, and what you're communicating, trying to produce, be it in a team. And it doesn't just have to be external partners, but within your team, like in technical writing, we get to understand, okay, if we use my hypothesis of awareness, adoption, and power usage, you're able to see, using that level of observability, you're able to understand, like, okay, maybe the onboarding process was not great. Maybe it's the docs. And throughout that journey, you can use that learning to build trust and confidence. Now, if you are looking at this and thinking, okay, what was that about? It's not just about APIs. That's what I like to say. You could be focused on APIs all you want, but we still work in different teams, and that has to be supported. And then when you do use observability and zero in on anomaly detection, then you will be able to learn more about your systems, and the internal systems can also be different within the different teams. So you also break down the silos, and you can make better, faster, and data-driven decisions. That's the QR code where to find me. And if you are still curious about observability, I will continue on this journey. Other curious people, we can take it together. And yeah, thank you.